I mean, unfortunately, even if there is some small group of elites that are able to go to Hawaii while something else does the mundane details of their business building, we are rather soon going to be faced with a world that has billions of people who do not have the skills to leverage AI. Some of them will be necessary for a time. You're going to need plumbers, but this is also not a long-term solution because not only are there not enough of those jobs, but of course we have humanoid robots that once imbued with AI capacity will also be able to take, they'll be able to crawl under your house into the crawl space and fix your plumbing. So what typically happens when you have a massive economic contraction that arises from the fact that a huge number of people are out of work is that the elites start looking at those people and thinking, well, we don't really need them anyway. And so the idea that this AI disruption doesn't lead us to some very human catastrophe, I think, is overly optimistic, and that we need to start preparing right now. What are the rights of a person who has had whatever it is that they've invested in completely erased from the list of needs? Is that person responsible for not having anticipated AI coming? And is it their problem that they are now starving and they're being eyed by others as, a useless eater? I don't think so.
How is it different than when the what's it called, the looming machine came and the textile workers, the result of the Luddite sort of revolution? How is it different than any time in history when technology automated a lot of people out of jobs?
I would say scale and speed. That's how it's different.
Mm.
And
And
also,
the scale and speed is going to result in an unprecedented catastrophe because the rate at which people are going to be simultaneously sidelined, not just in one industry, but across every industry, is just simply
and it also
new.
did actually happen. There was an for the first 50 years of industrialization, from like late 1700s to early 1800s, the Charles Dickens novels are essentially people coming from the farms who were displaced, arriving in cities, kids living on the streets. The British decided to pick everyone up and send them over to Australia, which is where I came from. There was this massive issue of displacement. I think we're going to go into a high velocity economy where, rather than this long arc of career that lasts 45 years, we're going to have these very fast careers that last 10 months to 36 months. And you invent something, you take it to market, you put together a team of 5 to 10 people who work together, you then get disrupted.
Can I mention a story here? There's an entrepreneur that uses Replit in a similar way. His name is Billy Howell. You can find him on YouTube, on the internet. He would go to Upwork and he would find what people are asking for, different requests for certain apps, technologies. Then he would take what they're asking for, put it into Replit, make it an application, call them, tell them, I already have your application. Would you pay $10,000 for it? And so that's sort of an arbitrage opportunity that's there right now.
That's not arbitrage, that's theft.
What is it? How is it theft?
You have somebody who has an idea that can be brought to market, and somebody else is cryptically detecting it and then selling back their own idea to them.
Well, they're paying them to do that. They're saying, I will give you $500 if someone makes this for me.
Right, but this is what I more or less think is going to happen across the whole economy, is that, yes, from this perspective, we can see that everybody is suddenly empowered to build a great business. Well, what do we think about the folks who are going to be displaced from the top? What are they going to think about all these people building all of these highly competitive businesses? And are they going to find a way to do, what venture capital has done or what record producers have done? What they're going to do is they're going to take their superior position at the top, and they are going to take most of the wealth that is produced by all of these people who have these ideas that in a proper market would actually create businesses for them, and they're going to parasitize them.
I think that with this introduction of AI and AI agents, old value has moved. And now it's not going to be the case that the idea itself is the moat. And it's not going to be the case that resources are the moat. So in such a scenario, you still have to figure out distribution. You still have to have, for example, like an audience. So if you're a podcaster now, you have 1 million followers on Twitter, you're in a prime position because you now have something that the great guy with a great idea with no audience has. You have inbuilt distribution. So I now think actually much of the game might be moving to like, yeah, still about taste and idea, but also the moat is distribution.
Yeah, and speaking of adaptive systems, the one of the adaptation that will happen is people will seek humans and will seek proof of humanity.
Oh, I agree that authenticity is going to become the coin of the realm, and anything that can be faked or cheated is going to be devalued, and things, spontaneous jazz or, comedy that is interactive enough that it couldn't possibly have been generated with the aid of AI. Those things are going to become prioritized. Spontaneous oratory rather
That's
than
great.
speeches.
Oh,
That
answers some of your questions.
That
no,
exists.
it answers my question for the tiny number of people who are in a position to do those things.
Stephen, you used the word moat, which I think is a really important word for entrepreneurs. We have to have a moat. We think a lot about moats, and it's an industrial age. A lot of people don't even know what you mean by moat.
It's just
And
the thing
I
that's,
often think about
yeah.
this idea of what are the moats that are left.
So to define how I define a moat, you've got a castle and it's got a small circle of water around it. And once upon a time, that circle of water defended the castle from attack. And you could pull up the drawbridge so nobody could attack you very easily. It's a defense from something. So it's your shield, it's your defense. And once upon a time as an entrepreneur, I've got a software company in San Francisco called Third Web, and we raised almost $30 million. We have a team of 50 great developers. And much of our moat was, you can't compete with us because you don't have the 50 developers and the $30 million in the bank.
How much of that 30 million went to coding?
The vast majority of it. I mean, what else are we going to do? What else?
So this is a good thing. I think moats are a bad thing. Okay, let me make the argument there. So everyone is looking for moats. For example, like one of the more significant moats is network effects.
Yeah.
So you can't compete with Facebook or Twitter because to move people from Facebook or Twitter, it's the collective action problem. You need to move them all at once, because if one of them moves, then it's the network is not valuable. They'll go back. So you have this chicken and egg problem. Let's say that we have a more decentralized way of doing social networks. That will remove the power of Twitter to kind of censor. And I think you're at the other end of censorship, right? And so part of my optimism about humanity is that generally there's self-correction. Democracy is a self-correcting system. Free markets are largely self-correcting systems. There are obvious problems with free markets that we can discuss. But take health. There is obesity epidemic. This period of time when companies, ran loose, kind of making this sugary, salty, fatty kind of snacks, and everyone gorged on them, and everyone got very, unhealthy. And now you have Whole Foods everywhere. Today, people in Silicon Valley, they don't go to bars at all. They go to running clubs. That's how you meet. That's how you go find a date. You go to running clubs. And so there was a shift that happened because there was a reaction. Obviously, cigarettes is another example. You were talking about phones and our addiction to phones. And I see a shift right now. Like in my friend circle, like people who are constantly kind of on their phones is already kind of frowned upon, and they don't want to hang out with you because you're constantly staring on your phone. So there's always these reactions.
But the problem is you reference self-correction. And I agree that there's actually an automatic feature of the universe in which the self-correction happens. You can't have a positive feedback that isn't reined in by some outer negative feedback. But the list of corrections involves things like you point to, where people become enlightened and they realize that they're doing themselves harm with either the sugar that they're consuming or the dopamine traps on their phone, and they get better. But also on the list of corrective patterns are genocide and war and, parasitism. And the problem is these things are destructive of wealth. And so you allude to the superior fact of an open market without moats. presumably the benefit of that is that more wealth gets created because people aren't kept from doing things that are productive. I see that. But then what is the product of all of this new wealth that is going to be generated by a world empowered by AI? Does it end up so highly concentrated that you have a tiny number of ultra